The Stonewall riots were a crucial, era-defining moment in the struggle for equality. In the early hours of June 28, 1969, Pet Gay Bar in the West Village of Manhattan became the epicenter of an event that changed the course of LGBT history. The days of riots which followed the uprising against police who frequently targeted the Stonewall Inn along with other gay bars were mementos. Stonewall Inn is designated a national monument in 2016. Brian R. Smith, AFP, Getty. It was the spark which ignited an entire civil rights movement, and the reason why we celebrate Pride Month in June. How did the Stonewall riots start? As they had on so many other occasions, police stopped by the Stonewall Inn on the spurious grounds of checking for alcohol law violations and other transgressions. What actually occurred in many of these cases was police intimidation and demands for payoffs, dubbed gayola, in return for not arresting or publishing the names of customers. Protesters from Stonewall. Steve Eason, Getty Images. The Stonewall Inn did have its fair share of mafia connections and questionable drinks policies, but on this summer night, those indiscretions were eclipsed by a dramatic turn of events. It was police procedure at the time to take anyone dressed as a woman to the bathroom, before arresting them if they were revealed to be biologically male. Rather than going along with this foul practice, the drag queens and transgender customers resisted. Patrons defied the intimidation, choosing to instead linger in the doorway, whipping up the crowd. Fires were started, as those inside the bar were escorted out by police, often violently. Shouts of "gay power" and "we shall overcome" began to erupt on the street. The riots lasted for days. Wikimedia Commons. Coins, bottles and other missiles were thrown at officers and their wagon as tensions simmered to boil over. And they did, after a lesbian was hit over the head by police for complaining that her handcuffs were too tight and turned to the crowd, appealing for their help. According to Craig Rodwell, quoted in an article by Lionel Wright, a number of incidents were happening simultaneously. There was no one thing that happened to one person, there was just a flash of mass anger. As news of the fracas spread across the city, the group of angry demonstrators swelled, until the police were forced to take refuge in the empty bar. I had been in combat situations, Detective Inspector Pine is quoted by Wright as saying. But there was never any time that I felt more scared than then. The crowd, which was made up of all shades of the LGBT community, flocked to Christopher Street to take part in this revolutionary act of defiance. The Stonewall Inn has become a place where protesters gather. KNBETANCUR, AFP, Getty. Although the police, backed up the tactical patrol force, tried several times to break up the crowd, they were outwitted by rioters who would simply disperse, regroup and attack from a different direction. The violence in Greenwich continued for more than 3 nights, with members of the LGBT community using the riots as a much-needed opportunity to distribute leaflets and information, educating and organizing amid the chaos. What happened after the Stonewall riots? In short, the organized fight for LGBT equality was born. The Gay Liberation Front was formed in the wake of the riots to protest against the social oppression of the LGBT community. Michael Adams, the executive director of services and advocacy for GLBT elders, has said that in the early days of the modern LGBT movement, the Gay Liberation Front was one of the most visible and vocal organizations promoting equality for the LGBT community. The events of the riot were turned into a 2015 film called Stonewall Centropolis Entertainment. Similar movements were quickly established in Canada, France, Britain, Germany, Belgium, Holland, Australia, and New Zealand. Why were the Stonewall riots such a turning point? Many historians and journalists have pointed out that during the 1960s the whole social climate was changing. The Vietnam War had radicalized the American youth. As young men went off to war, many became involved in homosexual relationships, while back in the States there was, according to Wright, an opening up of U.S. society that could not be quashed. The Black Civil Rights Movement was gaining ground. French students had gone on strike the year before, the Communist Party had campaigned for gay rights, and returning service people had stayed in port cities like Manhattan. Anti-Vietnam demonstration. John Hill. Craig Rodwell is quoted as saying, "There was a very volatile active political feeling, especially among young people, when the night of the Stonewall riots came along. Just everything came together at that one moment. There was no one thing special about it. It was just everything coming together, one of those moments in history that if you were there, you knew, this is it, this is what we've been waiting for." Nearly half a century on from the Stonewall riots, the global LGBT community still faces significant problems. In many South Asian and Middle Eastern countries, homoality is still illegal, and still, as far as the law goes, punishable by death. The Stonewall in Brian R. Smith, AFP, Getty. In many European countries and even in the UK, in Northern Ireland, the campaign for equal marriage continues. Anti-gay bullying is still prevalent in schools and workplaces, and anti-LGBT sentiment is still being combated across the world. But for many, that fight has its roots in those dramatic riots in Greenwich all those years ago. Read this: the celebrities that you didn't realize are gay.